Before starting this video, I do want to give a shout out to my patrons that support the channel. And if you'd like to support the channel, there are some great benefits for you if you want to look at the Patreon link down below. So with that out of the way, let's get into this week's video. What's going on YouTube? This is Devin coming back at you with another video today on PubStomp MTG. Glad to have you here. I did want to make a video of a couple of the Praetors that came out for March of the Machine, so I'm going to be focusing on some of them in the next couple of videos, but today I'm going to be focusing on Jin Gitaxias. For 5 mana, we have a Ward 2, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, you draw a card. Then like all the other Praetors that came out in this set, it has an ability to make itself into a saga. This stipulation has you pay 3 mana, you can only activate it as a sorcery, and if you have 7 or more cards in your hand. With that resolved, you can flip it into the Great Synthesis. This has 3 insane abilities for the Saga lore chapters. For the first lore chapter, draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand. You have no maximum hand size for as long as you control the Great Synthesis. So with those 7 cards in hand already, you would have about 14 or more depending on how much cards you have over 7. Then for the second lore chapter, return all non-Phyrexian creatures to their owner's hands. Then for the third lore chapter, you may cast any number of spells from your hand without paying their mana cost, exile the Great Synthesis, then return it to the battlefield. So yeah, this backside's doing so much, and the front side's actually pretty powerful too. Having a lot of different spells with CMC 3 or greater is actually quite a good possibility in this deck, so let's focus on that. I would say this is my second favorite Praetor that came out in this cycle besides Urbrask. Urbrask is definitely my favorite. I did make a video of him a little bit ago. If you want to go check that out, the link will be above here. Not gonna lie though, this is probably gonna be a mean deck for sure because of course it is in blue, and Jin Gitaxias itself is pretty powerful, so let's abuse that. Let's talk about some synergies we have in this deck. Let's also talk about some great card draw abilities as well. So we did receive a new card with Fairy Mastermind for 2 mana. It has flash and flying. Whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw a card. And it does have an ability to pay 4 mana. Each player draws a card. So when opponents are drawing cards, you're drawing more cards, kind of like a Consecrated Sphinx, but I do feel like this is pretty powerful by itself. It does have flash, and when each player draws a card, you'll draw 3 cards on top of that, so that's just great value. Since there's a lot of instant or sorcery spells in the deck, we might as well include Archmage Emeritus. For 4 mana, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. This card can get absolutely ridiculous, especially when we're casting so much instant and sorcery spells from our deck. But if we do want some insane card draw, we do have Consecrated Sphinx for 6 mana. It does have flying, and whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. So this is absolutely a ridiculous card. Of course, it kind of came out before Commander was quite popular. By 1 turn, if nobody has removed it, you could potentially draw 6 cards, basically if someone drawed a card at their upkeep. So this card could absolutely fill up our hand so that we could activate Jin Gitaxias' ability so that we could get into that backside with the Saga. So of course we had to add the OG, the original Jin Gitaxias Core Augur. It is 10 mana, it is pretty expensive, but it does have a big insane ability that helps our commander's ability out. It does have flash, and at the beginning of your end step you draw 7 cards. Each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7. I will say something about this card. It's pretty much a removal magnet, same with Consecrated Sphinx, because it definitely deals with our opponents by reducing their hand size by 7. That's actually pretty insane by that alone. And on top of that, you get to draw 7 cards at the beginning of your end step. That's just providing great value. I know it's 10 mana, but the more this game goes along, the more powerful it does get. Because we're drawing a lot of cards, we might as well add some protection for ourselves with Kozilek, Butcher of Truth. We're going to be drawing so much cards in this deck, it's absolutely going to be insane. So it does have some great abilities. When you cast a spell, draw 4 cards, and it does have Annihilator 4, but the big reason why we actually have this in this deck is because of that ability. Whenever it is put into a graveyard from anywhere, its owner shuffles their graveyard into their library. So this is protection either from mill or from ourselves drawing too much cards, so I do think this is a great include because of that third ability. Also, since we're drawing a lot of cards and also playing a lot of non-creature spells, we might as well take advantage of that. There's a lot of great ways we could do that with different cards in our entire deck. So as we're casting a lot of instant or sorcery spells, we might as well include Metallurgic Summonings. For 5 mana, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create an XS colorless construct artifact creature token where X is that mana spell value. Also on top of that, you could pay 5 mana mana, exile it, return all instant and sorcery cards from your graveyard to your hand, activate only if you control 6 or more artifacts, which is going to be pretty easy to do because we are going to be making a lot of construct artifact creature tokens. This card's definitely great to get a big board presence of creatures. In a similar fashion, we could also add in Chrome Host Seed Shark for 3 mana. It does have flying, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, incubate X, where X is that spell's mana value. So this could make a lot of incubator tokens on the battlefield, and when we want to, we could flip them into creatures. So this is just another way where we could provide that value. But if we do want a better way of doing that, we do have Shark Typhoon for 6 mana. We have whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you create an XX blue shark creature token with flying, where X is that spell's converted mana value. When this first came out in Ikoria, I absolutely fell in love with it because obviously this is a direct reference to Sharknado. But in a control deck like this is absolutely beautiful. We're going to be making so much flying sharks on the battlefield so that we could swing away against our opponents. We could also proliferate a little bit with Flux Channeler. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you proliferate. I thought I would add this in here because we have a lot of different ways of putting counters on our stuff. We have Planeswalkers in this deck, and we also do have that Saga on the backside. We definitely want to just flip through so that we could get absolute value out of there. That's the biggest reason why I had to add this card in here for sure. But since we're drawing so much cards off of non-creature spells, we might as well include Psychosis Crawler. This will definitely deal the damage to our opponents. Whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life, and its total power and toughness are equal to the cards in your hand. So if you're able to flip into the backside, you'll draw so much cards, and on top of that, this could possibly be a 14/14 or more. Especially when you're drawing so much cards with your commander alone, this is absolutely a great include for sure, no doubt about that. So of course we do also want to play some big spells. That's what Jin Gitaxias' philosophy is, especially with the Great Synthesis. We definitely want to focus and utilize that ability so that we could cheat a lot of spells in by playing Dig Through Time. For 8 mana, you have that Delve ability. You can look at the top 7 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand, and rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So we could potentially reduce this to 2 mana so that we could get some card advantage. You might as well add in some wheels like Echo of Eons. Each player shuffles their hand and their graveyard into their library, then draws 7 cards. Then it does have that flashback ability for 3 mana. You could also be pretty mean and add Narset Pardo Veils when you're wheeling. Again, this is the type of deck you might lose friends off of. So just to warn you there, we do also have extra turn spells. We do have a lot of them in here. So just to name a couple, we do have Time Warp, Karn's Temporal Sundering, and Expropriate. So your friends thought that they might play a game of Magic, but really you're just playing the game by yourself and nobody else is invited. But I mean, if you want to go that route, you could definitely go that route. I might warn you though, you may want to play extra turns only if you're going to be closing out the game, because you definitely don't want to be sitting there playing Solitaire all the day long. So we might as well add in this combo. So this is a pretty classic combo with Isochron Scepter and Mystical Tutor. You're going to imprint the Mystical Tutor onto Isochron Scepter so that you can pay 2 and tap it. You can copy it to play Mystical Tutor. What we are going to find is Nexus of Fate. You can take an extra turn after this one. So at the beginning of your draw phase, you're going to tap Isochron Scepter to Mystical Tutor for Nexus of Fate. Then you'll cast Nexus of Fate for 7 mana, and then Nexus of Fate will be shuffled back into your library so that you can search for it again with Mystical Tutor. So you will get infinite turns by that way. Also on top of that, you could also have another thing like Shark Typhoon on the battlefield, so you can make 7/7s flying in the air so that you can close out the game that way. So of course this is a pretty mean combo because again, you're playing the game by yourself. Nobody else is playing while you're playing. But since you read the thumbnail and decided to watch this video, you may lose some friends playing this deck. So that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video on Jin Gitaxias and on its backside with the Great Synthesis. I do feel like this is a pretty powerful version of Jin Gitaxias, and only for 5 mana, it's providing great value. Having that War 2 ability is actually pretty good, and on top of that, when you're casting spells with mana value 3 or greater, as long as they're not creature spells, you get to draw a card. And it does have an amazing backside with the Saga. Of course, you do have to have that stipulation of having 7 or more cards in your hand, and you can pay for mana only activating it as a sorcery. However, if you are able to pull that off, you're definitely going to be winning the game in the next couple turns, unless you do have some proliferate abilities, then you're going to be winning the game even further after that. However, let me know down below, what are your thoughts and opinions about this version of Jin Gitaxias? I do think the showcase treatment is absolutely breathtaking. I love the idea of the Ichor treatment and the Phyrexian symbol in the middle of there. But again, if you do bring this deck to a table, I will forewarn you, people might get salty off of it just with the amount of value you are getting and with the extra turns, so I would watch out on that. Other than that, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and with that out of the way, thank you for stomping by.